Welcome to Glasgow, Scotland. We're going to take a tour of one of Glasgow's most famous streets, Sauchiehall Street. Previously, we toured the first section from Charing Cross to here at Rose Street. And today, we will continue our journey to the end of this historic street. Let's first take a slight detour to view one of Glasgow's most beloved entertainment venues. This is the Glasgow Film Theatre, GFT. It's a uniquely charming and independent cinema, showing films you won't see in mainstream cinemas, including independent films, world cinema, documentaries, foreign language films, and re-releases of old classics. Its story began in 1939, a turbulent year just before the outbreak of World War II. It opened as the Cosmopolitan Cinema, a suitable name for a place that showcased films from around the globe. Even in its early days, it was envisioned as a place for film as art, rather than just mainstream entertainment. It was the first art house cinema in the UK outside of London. In 1974, the cinema underwent a significant transformation and officially became Glasgow Film Theatre. It was taken over by the Scottish Film Council and became a registered charity. This allowed it to further develop its programming, increase its capacity, and promote community engagement. Unlike many independent cinemas that have struggled or closed, GFT has not only survived, but thrived. The cinema features 3 screens, a 394-seater, a 142-seater, and a 60-seater. It uses 35mm and 70mm film projection, which gives the films a classic, nostalgic look. And for older films, it provides the viewing experience that was originally intended for the movie. A look that can't be replicated with modern digital film projection. In the 1870s, Stuart Cranston, a Glasgow tea merchant, started offering tea samples to customers in his shop at No. 2 Queen Street. To enhance the experience, he added tables and chairs and soon began charging for tea service with bread and cakes. This was the beginning of a new social experience for the people of Glasgow. It was the city's first tea room. The tea room concept quickly gained popularity, leading to the opening of numerous tea rooms throughout the city. Stuart Cranston's tea room would likely have been inspired by other tea rooms that existed in England, but his sister, Catherine Cranston, took the tea room concept and transformed it into a unique and iconic cultural experience. In 1878, she opened the Crown Tea and Lunch Rooms, a highly successful tea room on Argyll Street. She set high standards of service, food quality, cleanliness, and decor. She also saw the need for a new social setting that catered to a variety of people and didn't involve drinking alcohol. She created the environment for the going out for tea social culture to emerge. She decorated the Crown Tea and Lunch Rooms in the contemporary baronial art style. Though the Crown Tea and Lunch Rooms closed many decades ago, the building still exists today. However, the fine interior has sadly been lost. Catherine opened numerous other tea rooms in Glasgow. She created a variety of different rooms, each with its own purpose and catering to the needs of particular clientele. A ladies' room, specifically made for women to meet together. This was an important development as previously women had limited public spaces to meet without male accompaniment. Gentlemen's rooms, along with smoking rooms and billiards rooms, these rooms catered specifically to men. Tea rooms were a popular alternative for the working men of Glasgow during their lunch times. Cranston also served food in her lunchrooms, and many of her tea rooms featured unique artistic themes by young artists of the time. But her most famous establishment still exists today at this location, the Mackintosh at the Willow. It was designed by one of Glasgow's most famous architects, Charles Rennie Mackintosh. In the early 1900s, the most common style for rooms and buildings was the Victorian style. Rooms were typically filled with a multitude of objects and patterns, creating a sense of richness and abundance, but also a feeling of visual crowdedness and clutter. From intricate floral patterns in wallpapers and textiles to elaborate carvings in furniture and architecture, every surface was often filled. Charles Rennie Mackintosh's style was a radical departure from Victorian excess. He focused on using simple shapes, clean lines and light, airy spaces which featured a limited number of colours. His style also had a strong influence from Japanese art and design, which emphasised simplicity, balance and natural forms. Though his works were visually beautiful, Mackintosh's designs often prioritised functionality. He considered the purpose of a space or object and designed accordingly. This approach was an early example of the modern design philosophies that would emerge after his time. He was part of the Art Nouveau movement, which sought to integrate art and design into everyday life. However, his interpretation of Art Nouveau was unique. His strong geometric shapes gave his style a more structured and modern feel. The Willow Tea Rooms, opened in 1903, was a collaboration between Catherine Cranston and Charles Rennie Mackintosh. While Mackintosh had previously contributed to the design of Cranston's other tea rooms, this project was their most impressive to date. For the first time, Mackintosh was entrusted with the design of not only the interiors and furniture, but also the building's exterior and internal layout. Charles Rennie Mackintosh and his wife Margaret designed virtually every aspect of the interior: the decor, furnishings, cutlery, menus, and even the staff uniforms. The building, built in 1865, was formerly a warehouse. Mackintosh transformed it into a haven of aesthetic delight. He created a variety of spaces, each with its own distinct character and function, catering to the diverse needs of Glasgow's tea room customers. The Salon Deluxe, with its lavish grey, purple and white colour scheme, epitomised Mackintosh's innovative approach to interior design. Described as a fantasy for afternoon tea, the room was designed to create an intimate and richly decorated atmosphere. The high-backed chairs, the silver-painted tables, the luxurious silk-covered lower walls, and the soft grey carpet contributed to an ambiance of refined elegance. Originally, it was a room exclusively made for women. The Willow Tea Rooms also features a front salon, rear salon, gallery, and a billiard room. Mackintosh's design for the exterior of the Willow Tea Rooms was equally groundbreaking. He created an asymmetric composition with shallow curves and varying depths of recesses that harmonized with the surrounding buildings while embracing the principles of Art Nouveau. The white-painted smooth render provided a striking contrast to the natural stone facades of neighbouring structures. The name Willow Tea Rooms is a reference to Sauchiehall Street's beginnings as a meadow with willow trees. Mackintosh incorporated the willow tree into various elements using abstract shapes which form the hanging leaves of a willow tree. The Willow Tea Rooms closed in 1917 and took on several different functions through the 1900s. The Kensington Restaurant in 1920, Daly's Department Store in 1928, and Henderson's Jewellers in 1978. But the Willow Tea Rooms were not forgotten. In 2014, Glasgow local Celia Sinclair took on the task of restoring the tea rooms to their former glory and protecting Mackintosh and Cranston's legacy. She purchased the building and launched the Willow Tea Rooms Trust Restoration Project. Fundraising efforts were made, and this led to the restoration project, which cost £10 million to commence in 2017. The tea rooms were reopened in 2018 as the Mackintosh at the Willow, with the addition of meeting rooms, an interactive exhibition, and retail store in the adjoining building next door. Catherine Cranston's legacy extends beyond her business acumen. Upon her death in 1934, she left 2/3 of her estate to the poor of Glasgow. I hope you're enjoying the tour so far. Please press the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. In 1872, horse-drawn trams began operating in Glasgow. The late 1800s saw the rise of electricity-powered lighting and machinery. This led to the first electric tram in Glasgow in 1901. In the early years, the tram that operated here was Glasgow Corporation Electric Car 644. It ran from the south of the city, passing along the length of Sauchiehall Street before making its way to Anniesland. It could transport up to 55 passengers and was originally open-topped, but was altered to become fully enclosed in later years. At its height, there were over 200 trams operating in Glasgow on 135 miles of track, one of the most extensive tram systems in Britain. Sadly, the tram network was gradually phased out between 1949 and 1962 to be replaced by trolley and diesel-powered buses. On the final day of service, in 1962, there was a procession of 20 trams through the city between the depots at Dalmarnock and Coplaw Hill, an event attended by 250,000 people. This building was originally the Reed and Todd department store, which was renowned for selling canes, umbrellas, and fine leather goods, particularly for use in travelling. It was completed in 1900 and designed by architect James Thompson. The store had ceased operating by the 1970s. However, the company itself still exists today as Reed's of Mulgai, a business which sells leather goods. In 1879, an art gallery was opened at this location by the Royal Glasgow Institute of Fine Arts. It was opened by a group of artists and businessmen, including sculptor John Mossman. It attracted a large number of visitors, partly due to its inclusivity policy, which provided reduced prices for the working class. The Industrial Revolution in Scotland in the 1800s led to increased wealth among the middle class. This newfound wealth allowed for the creation of significant art collections in Glasgow. The art gallery here displayed artwork from a variety of esteemed artists, including those from Scotland, England, and France. It also featured many works by the Glasgow Boys, an internationally renowned group of Glaswegian artists. Their artwork focused on realistic landscapes and subjects, which was a rebellion against the popular artwork of the time in Scotland, which focused on idealistic paintings of Highland landscapes. The Royal Glasgow Institute of Fine Arts building was sold in 1902, and in 1904, it became the furniture department of Pettigrew and Stevens department store. Sadly, the building was destroyed by a fire in the 1970s. It was replaced by the building we see here today, which was originally the Sauchiehall Street Centre. A shopping centre with a variety of shops, a food court and a large car park in the upper levels. In 2002, it was redeveloped to house the individual retail units we see here today. The first venue in Glasgow to show moving pictures used to stand here on Sauchiehall Street at the site of the ABC building. Opened in 1875, it was a large circular, dome-roofed Victorian building, which was originally known as the Diorama. The venue entertained audiences with a large painting which surrounded the circular theatre and rotated slowly. The painting showed scenes of historical events. The venue would later become known as the Great Scottish National Panorama. In 1885, the building began to serve a much different purpose. It became Hubner's Ice Skating Palace, where skaters were entertained by an orchestra. It was through the 1800s that the technology of cinema developed. The earliest forms of this technology were simple circular objects that contained a sequence of images that were spun quickly to show movement. They could only be viewed by one person and only contained seconds of repeated movement. Then, Thomas Edison's assistant, William Dickson, created a device called the kinetoscope, which could use film tape to show moving pictures. This allowed for longer motion pictures to be shown, but again, it could only be viewed by one person. In 1895, two French brothers, Auguste and Louis Lumière, invented a groundbreaking motion picture technology, the cinematograph. It was a versatile device that served as a camera, projector, and film developer. It allowed films to be shown to large audiences, enabling the first examples of cinemas to function. This led to Glasgow's first example of cinema viewing just 1 year later in May 1896. Hubner's Ice Skating Palace showed Glasgow's first public screening of the Lumière cinematograph film, The Arrival of the Calais Express from Dover, and other such films as a backdrop to the ice skating public. These films were less than a minute long and simply showed minor events such as the arrival of a train. cinema technology continued to develop into the era of feature-length silent films. Glasgow was a major consumer of cinema. By the 1930s, it had over 110 cinemas, 175,000 plus seats, and the world's highest cinema capacity per capita. Over the years, many businesses have occupied this building. It was first built as a warehouse in 1895 by H&D Barclay using a classical freestyle design. This style borrows elements from traditional Greek and Roman architecture. Things like columns, pediments, the triangular gable ends, symmetry, and often a sense of grandeur, but it also has the freedom to incorporate other styles and use more modern building techniques. The original facade of that building, from 1895, is the one that we see here today with its huge arched bays, decorative stonework, and sculpted windows. The building would then become a furniture shop, and it remained so until it was given its most famous role as the Picture House, a well-loved cinema in 1910. Originally, the cinema seated 1,084 people. It was reconstructed in December 1912, with seating increased to 1,140. In 1925, it was further altered to handle a capacity of 1,600. The interior was beautifully designed by famous Glasgow interior decorators Guthrie and Wells. It featured a large court area which included palm trees and a fountain. The Picture House became a hugely popular venue. Their slogan read, "Give the public the goods, and they'll respond by giving you their patronage." This popularity is demonstrated by a 1925 newspaper article in the Glasgow Observer and Catholic Herald, which wrote, "The large queues which line Sauchiehall Street clamouring for admission every consecutive evening." Next week's programme is up to the usual high standard, and that is saying something. The films that were shown the following week were Eve's Lover, a romantic drama involving a man marrying a wealthy woman, and another film called 1 Year to Live, a romantic drama in which a maid named Elise is deceived by a doctor into thinking she has 1 year to live, which throws her relationships and life decisions into chaos, but also creates an opportunity for stardom. Both films were silent, as this was the nature of films in that era. In February 1929, the Picture House was taken over by the Gaumont British Theatres. It was renamed as the Gaumont Cinema in June 1947, and finally it was demolished in 1972 with only the red sandstone facade remaining to this day. It is now the Savoy Shopping Centre, which also replaced another historic building at our next location. This location was the site of another of Glasgow's former entertainment spaces. In 1910, the Savoy Theatre was built here. It was designed by renowned Glasgow architect James Miller. It featured an impressive white and gold interior, and it was the first theatre in Glasgow to include a tea room attached to the circle seating. The Scottish Referee newspaper wrote of the Savoy Theatre's grand opening night, which featured a renowned American female comedian named Nella Webb. It was her first appearance in Scotland, and she entertained audiences not only with her comedic talents, but also her impressive singing voice. Many other acts performed at the opening night, including singers, dancers, acrobats, and comedians. Sadly, the theatre failed as a business, and despite considerable effort to make it profitable, the Savoy Theatre was closed in 1912. The building went up for sale in 1915 and was sold for the remarkably low price of £25,000 to the London Picture House Syndicate. In December 1916, under new ownership, the building was reopened as the new Savoy Cinema, which was marketed as Glasgow Super Cinema. The opening night featured a showing of Saints and Sinners starring Peggy Hyland. The movie's plot centres around a man named George, who is enamoured with a preacher's daughter. However, his feelings are not reciprocated. The preacher's daughter causes a scandal for her father by associating with a man with a bad reputation. Chaos ensues as the characters are faced with a scarlet fever epidemic. Throughout the film, the characters, including the preacher, undergo a process of redemption, and George ultimately marries the girl he loves. As well as showing films, the new Savoy Cinema also featured a cafe, which hosted dances and jazz orchestras. The cinema was a successful business over many decades until it finally closed in 1958. The Daily Record newspaper in 1958 wrote of how the new Savoy Cinema was a profitable business at the time of its closure. The final film shown at the cinema was Tread Softly Stranger, a crime drama involving an irresistible temptress who causes trouble between two brothers, leading to robbery and death. Unlike the previous film showings we have mentioned in this tour, which were silent films, Tread Softly Stranger featured a full range of sound. This technology was developed many decades before in the 1920s. The building was reopened as the Majestic Ballroom. Rank Organisation, the company who owned the new Savoy Cinema, continued to have ownership over the building. They were a large company who owned a number of other cinemas and ballrooms and were confident that they could convert the building into a ballroom at the cost of around £50,000. The Majestic Ballroom experienced a successful run of business until the 1970s. It was known as the Magic Stick by its customers and had a capacity for around 1,400 dancers. In 1971, an advert for the ballroom in the Scotsman newspaper read, "To all readers, men and women, are you a way-out person? If so, the Majestic Ballroom is the way-in place for you, fully licensed, 2 bands, good music, good people, and a good time." The early years of the Majestic Ballroom would have featured live bands and orchestras, playing styles such as big band, traditional pop, jazz, swing, skiffle, and early rock and roll. Customers of the venue would have engaged in traditional ballroom dancing styles such as waltz, foxtrot, quickstep, jive, and possibly early rock and roll dancing. Musical genres would have changed in the 1960s with the emergence of rock and roll, brought about by the global success of the Beatles. This period also saw the Beat Revolution, which, along with rock and roll, brought about R&B and soul music. The twist and other contemporary dances became commonplace among UK dance halls. The beginning of the 70s saw the end of the Majestic Ballroom in Glasgow. Disco began to emerge with several discotheques opening in the area. However, it is most likely that the Majestic Ballroom did not hold disco nights in the short few years it was open in the 1970s. In 1972, both the Majestic Ballroom and the Gaumont Cinema were owned by the Rank Organisation. They made plans to demolish these buildings to make way for a new modern shopping centre and offices, the Savoy Centre, which is still operating today. Coincidentally, in March 1972, a fire broke out that destroyed most of the Majestic Ballroom and the Gaumont Cinema. Chaos ensued as members of the public had to flee the street while embers from the fire rained down from above. It took around 70 firefighters to put out the fire, but fortunately, no one was injured. The only surviving structure that remains from the original 1895 warehouse is the facade that we previously looked at on Sauchiehall Street. 2 historic buildings used to fill this gap: the Crown Halls and the Salon Cinema. The Crown Halls was built in 1840 by an auctioneer company named Morrison, Dick and McCulloch. At the time, the building was also used for dances and housed an art gallery. The Salon Cinema opened in 1913, but it was an unsuccessful business. It closed in 1923, and its impressive facade was removed in 1925, being totally replaced by a modern frontage with plain white masonry. In 1926, the top floors reopened as the Piccadilly Club. It was primarily a venue for dancing and live music with a capacity of 500, but it also featured cabaret and a cocktail bar. It earned a level of fame when the BBC began broadcasting dance music from it on a regular basis. It remained a nightclub, but changed ownership over the years. From 1970 to 1977, it became the White Elephant nightclub, before becoming Night Moves in 1982. Night Moves played host to gigs by many notable indie music acts such as The Birthday Party, Culture Club, Eurythmics, The Smiths, Morrissey, and R.E.M. In modern times, the building became used for shops. However, on the 22nd of March 2018, there was a fire which caused major damage to the historic Crown Halls and Salon Cinema buildings. The fire quickly escalated, requiring over 120 firefighters and 20 fire engines to control the blaze. It took 5 days to fully extinguish the fire. It affected several establishments that occupied these buildings, including New Palace Restaurant, Victoria's nightclub, The Works, and Holland and Barrett. The Pavilion Theatre, located on Renfield Street around the corner, was threatened by the flames and suffered smoke damage, but fortunately, firefighters were able to save it. We will take a look at the Pavilion Theatre when we arrive there soon. The destroyed Victoria's nightclub, also known as Vicky's, was a popular Glasgow nightclub frequented by celebrities and locals alike. It was known for its VIP area and its iconic illuminated staircase. The club was frequented by famous football players and was even visited by international stars like Madonna and Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson fought Lou Savarese at Hampton Park in Glasgow on the 24th of June, 2000. The fight was short-lived, with Tyson winning by a technical knockout in the first round after only 38 seconds. This was the second quickest victory of his career. That night, Mike Tyson would make an unlikely appearance at Victoria's nightclub and was spotted leaving the club at 3 a.m. This is Lauder's. It's a live music bar that dates back to 1836, and it's still open today. It was originally named the Royal Lochnagar Vaults until it was renamed by Archibald Lauder, who purchased the bar in 1871. The bar became renowned for having a barber shop in the basement where customers could get their hair cut whilst enjoying a drink. Archibald Lauder also produced a blended whiskey, Lauder's Royal Northern Cream, which was exported worldwide. It's one of the oldest blended Scotch whiskies in existence, and it's still being sold today. Whiskey had only been made legal in Scotland in 1815, a few decades before Lauder started blending his whiskey. The pub has always enjoyed a prime location here in the heart of a major social gathering hotspot that was once home to cinemas, dance halls, and theatres. The Pavilion is one of Glasgow's oldest theatres, having opened in 1904 as a music hall. The theatre was designed by Bertie Crew in the French Renaissance style. It features a grand terracotta facade. Inside the theatre, there is fine Rococo plasterwork, marble mosaic floors, and mahogany woodwork. The beautiful interior gives the theatre a classy atmosphere, and in earlier years, audience members would don their finest attire when attending the performances. It has a capacity of 1,449, including stalls, a circle, a balcony, and box seats. Bertie Crew also designed such theatres as London's Piccadilly Theatre and the Palace Theatre in Manchester. In the early days of the Pavilion Theatre, performances included variety, melodrama, and comedy. It featured stars such as Marie Lloyd, Little Titch, Harry Lauder, Sarah Bernhardt, and even Charlie Chaplin in the early stages of his career. As the popularity of the Pavilion grew, it also became a venue for many touring music artists. By the 1930s, pantomime was a major type of performance at the Pavilion. Pantomimes became a hit in Glasgow in the early 1900s and remain so to this day. Over the years, the theatre has seen many stars come and go, such as legendary Glasgow comedian Billy Connolly, who performed many of his iconic shows here. In 1981, the theatre saw a threat of closure due to financial difficulties. The Pavilion was rescued by a man coincidentally named James Glasgow, who made it a profitable business once more. In modern times, the theatre continues to show a variety of performances, including pantomimes, musicals, plays, comedians, music artists, and more. The building that once stood here was the Royalty Theatre. It was built in 1879 as part of a development by the Central Halls Company. The Royalty staged plays, opera, and musical comedy. In the early 1900s, a popular author and journalist named Neil Munro wrote a story which featured the Royalty Theatre. In the story, the main character takes his wife to a play at the Royalty Theatre. It was published in the Glasgow Evening News on the 24th of October 1904. But Neil Munro's most notable work happened in later years. He was known for his humorous stories and serious journalism. One of the most interesting events of Neil Munro's life was when he worked as a wartime correspondent during World War I. He visited the Western Front in France on several occasions, including in 1914 and 1917. He aimed to provide coverage of the war that fairly represented Scottish troops, feeling that British newspapers gave greater coverage of English regiments. His work took him to various locations, including hospitals, cemeteries, and wrecked towns. And he witnessed horrific scenes of war, such as the Battle of Vimy, which he described as frightfully battered and malodorous. His wartime reports were published in a variety of newspapers across Scotland, England, and even in Hong Kong. These reports have been described as vivid, moving, and written in an exceptional prose style. The royalty became the Lyric Theatre in 1914 when it was sold to the YMCA. It was rebuilt after a fire in 1953, but was later demolished in 1959 and replaced by St Andrew House, which we can see here, a large concrete office block, which is now a hotel. In 1868, a choral hall for choral singing was built at this location. It was used for rehearsals, concerts, and other events. In 1872, Charles Bernard purchased the choral hall and the buildings fronting it. He expanded the hall to accommodate 2,000 people and created the Gaiety Theatre, which opened in 1874. Bernard presented plays, opera, revues, and pantomime. The Gaiety was renovated in 1880 by architect Frank Matcham. In its early years, the Gaiety became a popular venue, attracting various performance companies to put on shows. The theatre even put on a heavyweight championship boxing match in 1890 between former champion James Mace, who at the time was 58, and a much younger opponent named Charlie Mitchell. Predictably, James Mace was defeated by Charlie Mitchell by decision after 4 rounds. The Gaiety changed ownership multiple times and became the first theatre in Scotland to be lit by electricity. It achieved varying degrees of success until it was finally demolished in the 1890s. In 1897, an Edinburgh-based company named Moss Empires built and opened the Glasgow Empire Theatre here at the former site of the Gaiety Theatre. The Moss Empire Company was hugely successful, having theatres in most cities in the UK and Ireland. The Glasgow Empire Theatre quickly established itself as Glasgow's leading venue for variety shows. After the opening night of the theatre, the North Daily Mail newspaper wrote, "It has indeed a comeliness and grace, not to speak of a richness, that no place of public resort in Scotland has ever possessed, and the fashionable audience which crowded the building last night from floor to ceiling were occupied during the evening quite as much in admiring the beauty of the interior as in paying attention to the entertainment." The opening night included a variety show involving numerous performers, singers, a comedian, a ventriloquist, acrobatic performers, and most notably, a character actor and singer named Vesta Tilley. Vesta Tilley was a female performer most known for impersonating men. She became the richest woman in England by the 1890s. The North Daily Mail wrote, "Vesta Tilley was the recipient on her appearance of an ovation which showed how deeply this engaging little lady has won the heart of the Glasgow public." Variety shows are a type of theatre performance that feature a diverse range of short acts within a single performance. These acts can include music, comedy, dance, magic, and more. The shows aim to entertain a broad audience by presenting a variety of talents in a fast-paced format. Variety shows are an early form of an entertainment style that can be seen today in hit TV shows such as Britain's Got Talent, The Royal Variety Performance, and Saturday Night Live in America. The Empire Theatre attracted famous names, especially in the years following the Second World War, when American stars performed to packed houses. Stars that graced its stage included Abbott and Costello, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Dorothy Lamour, Bob Hope, Judy Garland, Jack Benny, and Danny Kaye. The Empire Theatre closed in 1963 due to increased competition from other forms of media, such as television, cinema, and new genres of music like rock and roll. The theatre is now replaced by a retail and office building named Empire House. Glasgow's popular cinema legacy continues into modern times. This cinema opened in 2001 and was originally named the UGC Cinema. It's now called Cineworld, and, remarkably, it's the tallest cinema in the world at 62 metres tall and with 12 floors. It also held the record of being the busiest cinema in the United Kingdom by admissions in 2003, having attracted over 1.8 million patrons that year. Cineworld Glasgow has 18 screens over 6 levels and can accommodate more than 4,300 people. I hope you've enjoyed this history tour of Sauchiehall Street. Please check out our other video where we learned about the first half of Sauchiehall Street, and please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this.